All right, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're doing a class here on roast chicken and bread salad. Um, this is a really nice recipe for spring when we have a lot of things growing right now, coming into starting to go. All the herb gardens are nice and flush. And so uh, we're going to be utilizing some really good fresh herbs with this, as well as a lovely fresh Aurora Valley chicken. And so we're going to be using a whole chicken and roasting it, which is, uh, always a classic way to cook a chicken. And and I want to show you this evening a way to put herbs in between the skin and meat of the chicken to give it some extra flavor, and it looks really cool. So uh, in these classes, you're able to ask questions live. There should be a Q&A button on your Zoom meeting deal, so feel free to ask questions anytime during the class. There are people here who can read the questions and then I can answer them. And if we can't answer them immediately, we can look up answers, and if you give us your email, we can always get back to you in the future. Um, so a little bit about the chicken. We have our own agriculture with Basics Market. We're raising chickens, cows. We have dairies. We're making butter. We're producing milk. We have chickens that lay eggs, and we sell all these things out of the markets. And one of the really beautiful products is the Aurora Valley chicken, and these are grown or raised just 20 minutes south of Portland, and they are all organic, and they have access to pastures. And we also produce all their feed, and part of that includes some oregano, which helps with the flavor and keeping them healthy. And so we know these chickens for their whole existence, and then we sell them out of all our meat markets in the 5 locations of Basics Market. So excellent chicken, and most importantly, they taste great, they cook great, and really with something like chicken, you really want something very fresh, right? And so this is as fresh as it gets around the Portland area. Um, all right. So with this chicken, you're gonna, like I mentioned, you're gonna have a whole chicken, and the technique I'd like to demonstrate to start. Um, there's a couple things with this. One is we're going to be putting the herbs under the skin, and then we're going to let it air dry in the refrigerator overnight. So this is something you would want to start the night before you're planning on making this meal. Or you could do it early in the day and have it sit in the refrigerator all day, and that would work for you as well. So with the herbs, I was able to gather a bunch of fresh herbs from one of our market gardens, and and something like this is really handy for this technique. And this is just a long, thin spatula. And so what we're going to be doing is placing the herbs under the skin. So first you need to sort of separate the skin from the meat. And this chicken, they have the skin up here was a little torn, or maybe this is just the way it grew. So there's a little exposure here at the front, but that's all right. We still have plenty of room in there to stick our herbs. So what I do with the spatula is I just go in there and I create a pocket, and so you're just kind of lifting the skin gently without tearing it um, off of the breast meat. And so this is the breast side up here at this juncture. And then I have sage, and I have this really neat tricolor sage as well. And so I'm just going to kind of take the leaves of the sage and push them down in there into that pocket. And and then rosemary is really good for this because you can really get it in there. And so I'm using thyme. I'm using two kinds of thyme. I have a lemon thyme and a French thyme. And and I'm using sage and I'm using rosemary. And those are the three herbs. I'm using tarragon would be good here as well. And so you can just put I really love using fresh herbs and I feel you really can't overdo it, but so I'm gonna really stuff them in there. And so here's the breast side. And so that's pretty well stuffed up, right? And you can see that. And then of course, with these fresh chickens, we have some gizzards, and this is the neck here. And so you want to make sure to pull those guys out. Okay, now we're going to flip it over, the chicken over, and we're going to look another place that's good for putting your herbs in is on the thigh. And so this you come around the back here above the drumstick, and again you can really create a great pocket. You can see it's really real easy to get the spatula in there, and go ahead and stuff some herbs in there. And again, just rosemary, thyme, and sage are nice choices here. And all these herbs grow really great in the Willamette Valley. Um, they're good to, if you have a rosemary and a bush in your yard, it'll just keep getting bigger, and you can always utilize rosemary and thyme, sage. All right, so that's it. You just get them in there, and then we want to pat the chicken dry. So I'm just going to use paper towels and really give it a good patting. And I did this a little bit beforehand as well, before I started. And we want to, we're getting all the excess moisture off. And this is what putting it in the refrigerator overnight or for several hours is going to do for you as well. It's going to dry out the skin, draw out the extra excess moisture, and it will create a crisper skin. It will help with browning, and it makes for a crisp skin and juicy interior type roasted chicken. All right, so let's see here. Get a little more packing, and I feel satisfied with the amount of herbs in there. And then another place you can pop some herbs in the cavity, right in the middle of the chicken, and then as it roasts, all those the aromatics and the flavor of those will kind of permeate. So, all right. Now I'm going to wash my hands of the raw chicken. All right, thank you very much. You always want to wash your hands after handling raw chicken. And a note on that as well. So raw chicken has a salmonella bacteria, and so there was a time where it was recommended to rinse chickens off, but the thinking on that now is that you don't want to rinse the chicken, because really what that does is it just shoots the chicken juice all over your kitchen and your kitchen sink and all that. And so it actually creates more bacteria on your surfaces in your kitchen. So really you just kind of want, you can drain excess juice like directly down your drain. This padding is good with the paper towels. And then of course washing your hands afterwards. But you really, especially with these really nice fresh chickens, there's no need to rinse the chicken before utilizing it. And on that note as well, these Aurora Valley chickens, they are air chilled, so they're not washed in a saline solution, and that's important in that you should always look at your chicken and look for that saline solution, because that can add up to over 50% of the weight, and that's just salt water that the chicken absorbs if it's dunked in salt water. So that's an important thing to look for when purchasing a chicken. All right, so let's see what we have next. So these cards, these recipe cards, are available in all our markets, and we also have these recipes online at basicsmarket.com, where you can also find past classes, as well as all our recipes. So please check out our website, basicsmarket.com. But so I'm just going to kind of run through this recipe as it appears on the card here. So then the other component of this roast chicken and bread salad would be the bread, right? And so this calls for an Italian loaf, and what I chose is a ciabatta bread, and I think the ciabatta is nice for this, and it has some good pockets and some neat textures. And you know, in Italy, there's the classic bread salad, the panzanella, where you have tomatoes and mozzarella and a nice olive oil and basil and some toasted bread. And this is a little bit reminiscent of that. Definitely, this is a Mediterranean inspired type dish. So I've already, I pre-toasted some bread. So I've cut this ciabatta loaf in half already that way. So we'll be seeing the other half soon. But so you take your half loaf and cut it in half again. And this could be a baguette, or it could, you know, any kind of day old bread you can get your hands on works. Sourdough is not recommended, and that will just be a strong flavor for this. Okay, so we've got our bread and 3 tablespoons of olive oil and a brush, and I'm just going to brush the bread really nicely all over. Get both sides. And then we're going to toast the bread. And you can do this under a broiler, or you can put it. What I do with this dish sometimes is I will put the bread in at the same time as the chicken, and then just kind of keep an eye on it and toast the bread. Well, the chicken cooks, and you know, of course, the bread only takes a bit of the time. Or you can broil it, but if you broil it, you know, of course, make sure to keep a good eye on it so it doesn't burn, right? Okay, so I've got a good coating of oil on my bread, and then we'll just use a sheet pan and place your bread. Pop it in the oven, and then after one side browns, flip it over and brown the other side. Voila! It's done. And so here's some toasted bread. And so you can see we have a nice brown color here. And so you're going to want to have a big bowl And what we're going to end up doing is tossing the bread with some other ingredients and creating the salad in the bowl. So we have the bowl, um, and, uh, and I guess let's just talk about the tools sort of for this dish, right? Have the bowl, and then when it comes to roasting your chicken, you're going to roast it in a skillet, and you're going to flip it after 30 minutes, flip it and cook it another 20 minutes, and then flip it back and cook it 5 minutes. And this ensures that all the sides of the chicken are nice and brown. So for that flipping action, it's good to have a nice long spatula and some tongs. And then when we bring out the roasted chicken, I'll show you how to use that stuff. And then of course a wooden spoon is handy for mixing stuff, and we're going to be utilizing the skillet as well. All right, back to the bread. So we're going to shred this bread up in chunks. And this is a rustic dish, right? So we're just kind of curing. And you want 2 to 3 inch pieces here. And just tear it up. All right. It's nice and crunchy. Okay, so we have our corn bread. Now, so we got our bread in the bowl. Now we're going to make a simple vinaigrette, and we're using 3 tablespoons or olive oil, or 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and we're using some vinegar. So we're going to mix the vinegar and the olive oil together. Do that. And then a little bit of salt and pepper. So we're going to put a bit of salt and pepper here. Yes.
How much vinegar?
On the vinegar, it's 1.5 tablespoons. All right, and so you have a simple vinaigrette like this, and we're going to go ahead and put that over our bread. And then we can use this wooden spoon and just sort of make sure the bread is all coated with that. Oops. So you just want a quarter cup of that at first. And that was a little more, but we'll be okay. See, that's what I get for not having my glasses on during this. So you want to use a quarter cup of that vinaigrette, but it doesn't produce a whole lot more. But that's going to come back, and we can produce a little more for the end. Anyway, so we've tossed a quarter cup of the vinaigrette on the bread there, and now let's go ahead and look at the current, or we're using golden raisins here. So this is a mixture of warm water and red wine vinegar. And what I've done is just soak these raisins. You can use currants or golden raisins, and this just plumps them up, and then these will be ready to go into our salad as well. And then here's some pine nuts, and pine nuts are just simple, are that. And humans have been eating pine nuts since Paleolithic times. all over the world, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. And these I've just put in a dry skillet and toasted until they're golden brown. So this is paleo food, right? And all right, so now we're going to keep skillet up, and we're going to put some slivered garlic. So slivered garlic, I just sliced it really thin. And then some scallions, and scallions are green onions. So let's go ahead and we'll sliver some scallions, and I washed these, and I'm just going to slice them thinly. And on the scallions, you're going to want about a quarter cup. So that looks good to me. And then we're going to put them in in the skillet here and toast them up. We have a little bit of olive oil. This is a tablespoon of olive oil. So we're over the course of this recipe, we're going to be using 8 tablespoons of olive oil. And so as you progress through it, you'll see where to put what. But I think it breaks down into like 3 different measurements of olive oil. And we're just going to let these saute a little bit. And and then all these are components that are going to go in get mixed in with our bread, right? So so we've got our tablespoon of olive oil, our quarter cup of scallions, and our 3 cloves of garlic. Just getting those a quick cook in the skillet. We're going to go ahead and drain our currants. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that excess water and vinegar. I've got my pine nuts ready to go. Just want to keep these moving a little bit. Let the garlic get some color. Okay, it smells really nice. Looking good. Green currants, bump up. Okay, now I have here some stock, and you can use chicken stock, veggie stock, or just water for this. And this is 2 tablespoons. We're just going to get a little extra moisture onto our bread there. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, question here. Is it better to do this in one pan or multiple pans, or does it really matter?
That's entirely up to you. Really, you only need I mean, you could definitely do it in one pan. You know, if you wanted to kind of, well, I guess you'll need 2 pans. And now I'm rethinking it. Yeah, you'll need 2 pans because let's say the chicken is already in the oven roasting and it's in your skillet. So you'll need another little skillet to toast your pine nuts. And I toast the pine nuts first in a dry pan, and then utilize that same pan and put your olive oil in there and your green onions and your garlic afterwards. So it'll take 2 pans overall, and then it will also, and then of course the bowl, And then you'll also need a setup such as this, which I have some foil here and a baking dish. And this is where our bread salad's going to end up. Kind of like, it's like a real light stuffing in a way. I mean, it's not going to be as moist as a stuffing, but you're going to cook it off a tad, right? All right, so we're going to add the pine nuts, the raisins, the golden raisins, and we're going to go ahead and add our garlic and green onions. And you just want to toss all that stuff together. Yes.
Do you use oil?
You don't need oil in the pan when you're cooking the chicken. What you're going to do with the chicken is heat the pan up, get it nice and hot, and I think the recipe recommends 5 minutes or so. So it'll be hot, and you'll place that chicken in the pan, and it'll sizzle a little bit. And what's going to happen is the chicken itself will release the fat, and it should lubricate the pan. You could lightly oil it if you're worried about the chicken sticking or something like that, but I haven't had trouble with that with using a cast iron pan. I'm not sure about other materials. All right. So go ahead and plop the bread into our baking dish. All right. And then we will put some oil over it, just loosely tinted, and then into the oven. And voila, here's the chicken's done. So here's the chicken roasted, right? And I've already let it rest. So we're in good shape. So I can handle it. And grab a special cutting board. Okay, and so what's important here is to hang on to your hand with the drippings, because we're going to be using these drippings to finish the salad. And that's really tasty, tasty stuff. So you can see we've got, as the chicken roasted, it left us all these great drippings on, and we're going to be able to build a jus out of that, and that's what the French would call that pan sauce. Okay. Okay, so we're removing the chicken from the oven. We're turning off the heat, and we're letting that. So you have your, for the last 5 to 10 minutes, right? The chicken, you flipped it, and you're letting it crisp up on top, and you can see how. Here, I'm going to lift this up to the sky there. You can see how all those herbs look really nice in there. And so even if, anytime you're roasting a chicken, it's not a bad idea to throw some herbs under the skin. It looks neat, and it really adds a lot of great flavor. But we, of course, are going to be cutting this chicken up a little bit. So you have the chicken in there 5-10 minutes to finish the top, and then you have the bread. It's just kind of coasting in it, and it's drying out a little bit, and just letting those flavors marry. We have the stock, right, and the vinaigrette, and the raisins and pine nuts, and the scallions, garlic, and you just want all that stuff to infuse into the bread. Okay. So the chicken has it's been resting. We've got the bread in the oven coasting. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to pour off the extra fat out of this pan. So I'm just going to put that into my compost. And what we're leaving behind is the stuff that's stuck to the pan, the fond. The fond, this is called, and this is the really flavorful, uh, the real flavorful, like caramelized chicken drippings. And now I'm going to turn the heat on, and we're going to loosen that stuff up. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water to loosen up the fond, about a tablespoon or so. And so I'm going to let that get hot, and then I will use my wooden spoon. And we should get, it's just kind of like you're going to get a light gravy kind of feel out of this. And it's a dressing, right? Or a glaze, we call it here. So it'll just take a couple minutes. So you can see it's starting to bubble. And then I'll add a little bit of water. And this gets really good. And it smells like the chicken is roasting again. And you just want to get all those little bits, and they'll start to melt. And you can hear the sizzle. And when it's kind of like a nice glaze texture, you can off the heat. So we'll just let it go a little more. So you're looking for kind of a light gravy, and this is like a classic pan jus, just lifting the flavor out of the pan and then pouring it back over whatever you cooked in the pan. A really nice, simple, classic technique. All right, that's beautiful. And it just has a really great color, really good caramelization. Okay, so we've got our jus there, our glaze. Our chicken is rested, and so let's go ahead and cut the chicken into 8 pieces. So to cut the chicken, we're just going to follow, we can use the same chicken cutting technique that we use with the raw chicken. We're going to pull on a leg and kind of loosen it up and find the joints. And with the cooked chicken, of course, it's pretty easy to just pull apart. And you always want to just find where that joint is. First, cut through the skin, look for your joint, and cut through it. And the skin is really nice and crispy. Wings, same deal. Just find that joint, cut through. All right, and now we've got the breast. So for the breast, I think our best bet is to want to just find the center, the breastbone, right? And let your knife slide right down that. Follow the curve of that breastbone. And it should pop right off. And then same on the other side. And the center. and follow the scallop. Okay. And we're going for boneless breast here, and we'll just leave the carcass. Now the carcass, of course, will make great stock, chicken stock, right? And you can pull off any other meat off of here. Okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can cut your drumstick and thigh, separate those. Okay, so there's our 8 pieces of chicken. Some nice herbs there. We can use that to garnish, which is always fun to make it look nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll grab our bread out of the oven and finish it with the glaze. All right. So here we have the toasted bread. And now we're going to add some greens and our glaze. And again, we'll go ahead. I'm just going to utilize this bowl to toss everything together. So here's our warm bread. Now the greens I chose are arugula, and arugula is a really nice green, and I think again, you know, spring into early summer, you can get a lot of really interesting greens in the market. But arugula is available all year round. It just has a really nice flavor, really good a spiciness to it, and it's good both cooked and raw. I like to make a pesto out of arugula, but any sort of greens, mustard greens will work here, baby lettuce greens. You can get really colorful, put all kinds of different greens. But arugula is a good choice. So we're just going to mix that arugula in, and it's going to wilt a little bit, and that's what we're looking for, is a little bit of a wilt. And then we'll go ahead and put our sauce in there. And then at this juncture as well, if you had reserved, if you did have any leftover dressing, you know, you could look at putting that on here, or you could save that for table service and have a little bit of dressing that people could add individually. So we just want to toss the greens with the red, and then of course our beautiful glaze. And then you just need sort of a large serving platter. And go ahead and plop rolled bread salad in there. Make sure you get all those pine nuts and raisins. Okay. And then you put your pieces of chicken around. And then you can garnish with some of those herbs that you used in the chicken, some rosemary, some thyme, some sage, things like that. And see what we have here. So that is the roast chicken with the bread salad. And I think it looks delicious. It smells great. And let me have, I'll have a little bite, huh? So grab a fork. See where we're at. A little bit of the chicken, a little bit of the salad. It's wonderful. It's a really nice dish. You get that little bit of the crunch from the crispy chicken skin. Again, it really helps to put it in the refrigerator overnight. Uh, do that step or many hours before you roast it to help draw out the extra moisture. Um, you get that lovely roast chicken flavor from that glaze that you simply made in the skillet there. The freshness of the herbs and the arugula come right through. So I hope you have fun making this dish and enjoyed the class. Please join me for upcoming classes. You will be seeing those on your screen. We have a lot of neat things coming up for the spring. And happy cooking.